I saw my son with a black eye. His father-in-law laughed, then he whispered an amazing truth. As Tom pulled into the driveway, the warm glow of the setting sun illuminated his suburban sanctuary. His heart sank when he spotted Jake sitting on the porch, a stark contrast to the peaceful street lined with vibrant flowers and manicured lawns. An angry black eye marred his son's face, and Tom's gut tightened. He had always vowed to protect his family, and yet here sat his son, wounded and alone. The joyful laughter of kids playing nearby felt like an eerie mockery, amplifying the silence that enveloped him. What happened? Tom's voice wavered, betraying the chaos swirling inside him. The illusion of control he maintained throughout the day as a devoted contractor slipped away. He needed to be there for Jake, but the weight of disappointment in himself was suffocating. As he knelt beside his son, the shame loomed. Hadn't he always taught Jake to stand strong against bullies? How had he failed to prepare him for this? Jake's lower lip trembled. "They think it's funny to push me around, Dad." The words blurred together with unshed tears, the quintessential pain of a 15-year-old. Anger surged through Tom, a primal instinct to shield his boy from the hurt. But as he turned to Hank, his father-in-law, who leaned against the porch railing chuckling, a different kind of rage flickered inside him. "What's so funny?" he demanded, incredulous. Hank paused, the smile faltering, then blurted out, "It's just kids being kids. You gotta toughen up." The callousness of his laughter sliced through Tom like glass. Here was a man who had always extolled the virtues of loyalty, the necessity of family support. But where was that support now? The void between them widened, Tom's frustration mingling with a growing dread that this was a generational divide he had never anticipated. How could Hank, with all his life wisdom, misinterpret Jake's pain so casually? He wrestled with his emotions, caught between protecting Jake and confronting the inability of an elder to acknowledge real suffering. The love for his son battled against the fear of alienating family. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tom's muscles clenched, and with a shaky breath, he pushed forth, demanding answers from Hank. "Why can't you just see how serious this is?" Hank's laughter faded, revealing vulnerability. A heavy sigh escaped him as a distant memory took form. "I got bullied too, you know," he admitted, an unexpected chink in his armor. The revelation hung there, heavy and frail, weaving a fragile connection between them. But Tom couldn't let it dissolve the anger within. "You think laughing at this is the answer?" His heart raced, realizing that the laughter was merely a shield for Hank, just as he fought to build a fortress around his son. The thought carved deeper, generations of silence and suffering. Would he let that define them? As the harsh realities of masculinity loomed, Tom found himself at a crossroads. The conversation was impossible, unanswerable. What do you say to Jake after all this? Every ounce of his being ached for clarity, yet the path before him felt jagged and blurred. Hank's tentative sincerity offered no solace, only frozen uncertainty, so Tom wrestled with the shifting ground beneath his feet. In that charged silence, he realized this might be the defining moment, the pivotal chance to not only protect Jake, but to redefine what strength meant for their family. But how could he bridge that gap when every step felt fraught with silent legacies? Refusing to surrender, Tom hovered between anger and resolution, longing for the words to frame a new narrative, for both Jake and himself. The uneasy silence wrapped around Tom as he turned to face Jake. His son, still cradling his bruised face in his hands, was toying with the idea of tears that refused to fall. The pain carving through Tom felt unbearable. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a vice. He needed to establish trust between them, to ensure Jake understood he could talk about this. "Jake," he began, his voice softening, "I want you to know that it's okay to feel hurt. It's not just part of growing up, it's real, and you deserve to be heard." Jake's eyes flickered up, hesitant but curious. He was used to the unwavering stoicism often expected from men in the family, the facade of toughness that had been draped over generations. Tom's heart swelled with determination. Perhaps vulnerability could light a different path. "Remember when I told you about my first job? How I struggled at first?" Tom continued, reaching back as if to summon his own childhood. "I didn't know anything about working with wood or tools. I almost gave up, but I learned. I learned by asking questions and making mistakes." "Like I should have just punched them?" Jake replied, skepticism creeping into the tone. "No, not like that. Strength isn't just about fighting back. It's also about how to deal with pain and find the courage to speak out. You can stand up for yourself without resorting to violence. There are many ways to handle this." Tension coiled through Tom as he recalled every moment Hank had laughed, stubbornly holding on to notions of manliness that tacitly encouraged enabling behavior. Their family needed a new blueprint, one where they could share their vulnerabilities openly instead of burying them under bravado. Tom's mind raced. He pondered. How did Hank's upbringing shape his responses? Was he forever doomed to the same cycle, or could he break it? In that moment, Tom made a crucial decision. He wouldn't just protect Jake from bullies, but teach him how to defend his inner self against toxic expectations as well. "Let's come up with a plan," Tom said, hope bubbling to the surface. "We can talk to your school, maybe even get a counselor involved. But you need to tell me what you want to do. How can I help?" Jake looked away, shifting uncomfortably, but holding on to the faint glow of encouragement. "I don't know, Dad. It feels hard. I should just deal with it. It's what guys do, right?" Tom's heart raced. "No, Jake. You are not some outdated idea of a man. You're my son, and what matters is that you feel safe and valued." With resolve, Tom continued forging ahead, re-examining the pitiful limitations imposed on generations of men in their family. Each word halted the cycle. Words held power, a refreshing truth washing over him. As dusk rolled into night, the conversation swirled like fireflies, illuminating the dark corners of Tom's mind. He had always thought of masculinity as unwavering strength, but it was time to redefine it. Maybe the strongest man was the one who could admit fear, the one advocating for his son's well-being, paving a different road for future generations to walk on. But just as he began to feel a sense of understanding with Jake, a familiar voice shattered the moment. Hank cleared his throat, an interjected presence thick with misunderstanding. "You can't seriously believe—" Tom felt a cold knot in his stomach. The spirit of confrontation surged, and he knew he had to make a stand. "No, Hank, it's not about what you believe. This is about Jake. It's time to have a different kind of strength." A fierce determination ignited within Tom. The moment was ripe to combat not only the bullies at Jake's school, but also the oppressive legacies standing in the way of true progress in their family. Would he have the courage to pull down the walls built by his father-in-law, or would he stumble back into silence? That question loomed as the shadows deepened around them. Tom stood tall, facing Hank, teeth clenched as the weight of his resolve pressed against the voice of tradition that surged from his father-in-law. The hall was a battleground of old ideologies against new understandings, and the air thickened with unspoken words. The lingering shame from childhood, stitched into the very fabric of their familial expectations, screamed for attention. "Tom, you can't raise him to think he can just talk his way out of every situation. He needs to be a man," Hank said, with a tone that suggested he was imparting wisdom from a mountain of life experience. A flicker of doubt nagged at Tom, a persistent whisper questioning if he was going against everything that had been ingrained in him since childhood. But that doubt was quickly overshadowed by the memory of Jake's shattered confidence. "Manhood isn't about shutting down your feelings or ignoring the hurt," Tom replied, steadying his voice. "It's about knowing when to stand your ground and when to ask for help. It's about equipping him to face the world, not just with fists, but with his heart and mind." Hank crossed his arms defensively. "And what happens when someone pushes him too far? You're preparing him for a world that doesn't care about feelings, Tom." "That's exactly why we need to change," Tom asserted, a sense of urgency igniting his words. "If we continue this cycle of silence and anger, Jake will never understand the world beyond violence. He deserves a chance to grow, to learn how to express himself without feeling like he's betraying anything." Jake shifted uneasily between them, sensing the tension crackling in the air like a live wire. Tom's heart broke at the sight of his son, caught in the crossfire of legacy and progress. He not only had to defend Jake from external threats, but also help him navigate the turbulent waters of familial expectations. "Why are you so afraid of change, Hank?" Tom asked, daring to push. "Is it that hard to see a different path? That our boys can grow strong in ways we've never imagined?" Silence enveloped the room as Hank considered the challenge. Tom, meanwhile, felt the adrenaline pumping through his veins, the desire to forge a new narrative galvanizing him. He would not be another brick in the wall of outdated ideologies. He would wield his voice as a tool for transformation. "Let's try counseling, Jake. Let's find someone who can guide us through this. I want you to feel comfortable in your skin, no matter what anyone else thinks." Jake looked up, uncertainty mingling with a flicker of hope. "Really? You'd help me with that?" "Absolutely," Tom affirmed, a sense of purpose settling in. The corners of Hank's mouth turned down, skepticism etched into the lines of his face. "You think this will work? Talking it out instead of dealing with what's thrown at you?" Tom felt an inner voice demanding to be heard, urging him to stand firm. "I think it can, Hank, but it's going to take more than talking. It'll require us to listen, to confront not only the bullies in school, but also these old ideas of masculinity. It's about redefining strength, embracing vulnerability as a form of resilience." As the weight of his words hung in the air, Tom's resolve deepened. He couldn't be afraid of confrontation anymore. He needed to navigate this shift not only for Jake, but for himself, to break free from the trappings of a distant legacy. With Hank's presence still lingering, Tom rose to face the daunting task ahead. He would have to challenge not just the bullies, but also the family members who clung stubbornly to the past. His heart raced not only from fear, but from a newfound purpose. And just as Tom was about to take the first meaningful step towards this unknown but necessary journey, the door creaked open. A knock echoed through the house like a thunderclap, a signal that the confrontation was far from over. He turned cautiously, knowing that the next moment could change everything. Would he find support or further resistance? The door swung open, revealing Ava, her brows knit in concern. She glanced between Tom and Hank, silence stretching between them like a chasm filled with unsaid words. Her instinctive apprehension sparked a fresh wave of determination within Tom. This wasn't merely about him anymore. It was about safeguarding the fragile relationship with his son and the future he wished to build for Jake. "What's going on?" Ava asked, her voice steady but tinged with worry. Tom could see the flicker of recognition in her eyes, the understanding of a familial dynamic tangled in tradition and shame. "Just a discussion," Tom said, attempting to project calmness as he glanced at Jake, who had grown quiet, his previous spark dimmed. Tom refused to let this moment fester into another argument steeped in bitterness, not when he stood at the precipice of change. "Discussion?" Hank scoffed, misreading Tom's resolve. "More like an attack on how we've always done things." Ava's frustration was evident, her hands on her hips. "Tom is trying to do right by Jake, Hank. Times are changing. Maybe it's about time we start considering that." Her support felt like a warm embrace in the midst of the raging storm. With Ava on his side, Tom felt an unmistakable shift. No longer was he facing the battle alone. An unexpected strength coursed through him, compelling him to articulate his vision with even greater clarity. "Thank you, Ava," he said, turning toward her. "I want Jake to understand that it's perfectly okay to feel, to articulate those feelings, especially when it's hard. I believe creating space for vulnerability is the ultimate act of strength." "But what about real-life situations?" Hank slammed back. "What happens when someone takes advantage of that softness? You want him to be a punching bag?" Tom's blood simmered beneath his skin. He could almost hear the cumulative voices of all the men in his family echoing Hank's refrain. Yet, with each pulse of anger, the old hold over him slipped just a little more. "No one's saying he should be defenseless," Tom shot back, his voice edgy but firm. "But if he can talk through emotions, he'll know when to stand up for himself or seek help. That's a skill that will serve him far beyond any fight." Tom witnessed Jake's eyes brighten, his son absorbing the words like sunlight. Each affirmation solidified their bond further, not as an obligation, but as freedom to redefine manhood. Hank's fury simmered as he wrestled with his convictions. Tom's mind was aching to explore a potential truce, maybe even a compromise that would appease Hank while enlarging the scope of understanding for Jake. "Let's channel this energy into something constructive," Tom suggested, his heart racing as if he were teetering on cliffs. "Why don't we set up a family meeting? We could invite a counselor, someone who understands these transitions. They can mediate and help us all find a middle ground." Hank's mouth twisted in contemplation, vulnerability creeping in amidst his aggression. A silence filled the air, heavy with the weight of uncharted territory. Would he truly entertain the prospect of change? The tension was electric, a taut string ready to snap or yield. Tom felt a mix of apprehension and hope. If Hank could come aboard, perhaps they could truly shift the tide of tradition. Just as Tom braced himself for the answer, a loud crash erupted outside, startling everyone. It was a commotion, followed by a shout that turned stomachs cold. "Get off him!" A lump formed in Tom's throat. It was the unmistakable voice of a child struggling against a bully. With renewed urgency and dread, Tom realized he had to act quickly. He shot a glance at Jake, who now mirrored his own internal conflict, eyes wide with fear. The moment of truth had arrived. Would Tom rush to intervene, risking his own perspective on vulnerability, or would he seize this escalating crisis as an opportunity to put his newfound beliefs into action? He stepped toward the door, body tense, heart racing. The question throbbed in his mind. Was he ready to redefine not just his son's future, but his own role in this chaotic legacy? As Tom pushed through the doorway, the air crackled with tension, a weight pressing down on his chest. Outside, chaos unfolded before him. Several kids were gathered in a tight circle, their faces scrunched with a mixture of excitement and malice. He spotted Jake, caught in a struggle with a larger boy, his small fists flailing in an effort to push back against the weight pressing him down. "Get off him!" Tom shouted, voice cutting through the din. The laughter surrounding the scene halted momentarily, eyes turning toward him, but the larger kid merely leaned harder on Jake, seemingly unfazed. Tom's heart thudded as he sprang into action. This was not merely an act of a father defending his son. It was a testament to the new principles he had begun cultivating. Each step toward the fray felt like a challenge, pushing against years of ingrained responses that urged him to hold back, let Jake learn to defend himself. But what kind of lesson was that? What he learned about manhood was evolving right there on that playground. It wasn't about brute strength. It was about presence, about being the force that stood in between fear and support. As he approached, his eyes locked onto the bully, determination flickering to life within him. With a strong, authoritative voice, he shouted again, "Let him go!" This time the bully turned, surprise lighting up his features. Tom felt that flicker of doubt from the crowd. Would his resolve shine through, or would he himself become the target? The boy released Jake and took a step back, studying Tom, sizing him up. That moment seemed to stretch out, It was a junction of past and future, anger and growth. Tom's stomach churned, but he held his ground, willing himself to reflect strength that didn't surrender to fear. "Are you okay, buddy?" He squatted down beside Jake, who had pulled himself to his feet. The small boy nodded, the glimmer of tears pooling in his eyes contrasting with the defiance swirling behind them. "Yeah?" Jake mumbled, pain masking the tinge of pride at having his father step in. "Dad, I'm fine," he protested, but Tom gently interrupted him. "It's not about being fine. It's about standing up and making sure you feel safe. I'll always have your back, and you can always talk to me." A hushed murmur rippled through the crowd as they absorbed what was unfolding. The unexpected display of so much emotion from Tom set a precedent that hung in the air like an unbroken thread, connecting him to Jake and redefining his role in the process. Hank's shadow loomed at the edge of the circle, the bitterness etched on his face, conflicting with dawning realization that perhaps Tom was onto something. There was a chance he could understand, to redefine this family dynamic. "Are you teaching him to be a coward?" Hank challenged, stepping in closer, but his voice wobbled with uncertainty. Tom turned to face him, fighting the urge to shrink back under the weight of judgment. "A coward? No, Hank. I'm teaching him to be brave, to stand tall, even when it's hard." The tension in the air shifted. Tom scanned the faces around him and realized that they weren't just witnesses to a confrontation. They were witnesses to his transformation. He wasn't simply defending Jake. He was building a foundation of understanding that would ripple through their family. As he held Hank's gaze, he could sense the tiny fissures of doubt beginning to pierce stubborn conviction. Hank hesitated, unsure, and for the first time, it seemed like an opening, a chance for dialogue. In this decisive moment, Tom felt both a crumbling of his old self and the spark of something new. The fight wasn't just outside, it was internal. He could either surrender to tradition or rise to become the man he wanted Jake to look up to. "Maybe it's time we talked," Hank finally said, voice low but laced with a quiver of reluctance. "Yes," Tom replied, his heart thrumming. "It's definitely time." But just then, as relief washed over him, a distant shout broke the implications of hope. "Tom! Jake! We need you!" The urgency in that distant wail crushed the moment, pulling both father and son back to the present, where more chaos awaited. Were they truly ready to embrace this evolving path, or would this be another bitter chapter? Tom waded through the confusion, his senses heightened. The urgency of that call pulled him from the cusp of a connection he had begun to forge with Jake and even Hank. His heart raced, each beat punctuating his resolve to continue reshaping his identity as a father. But the dread lurking at the periphery of his thoughts hinted that he might soon be tested again. "Stay close to me, Jake," he muttered, instinctively wrapping an arm around his son's shoulders. It felt more protective than restrictive, a silent promise of solidarity. Together, they moved toward the source of the shout, where a group of children had gathered around another commotion. The scene was frantic, kids pointing and shouting, their voices blending into a chaotic chorus. A girl stood in the middle, her face streaked with a mix of tears and dirt, a small crowd surrounding her in an impromptu intervention. As Tom and Jake neared, he gulped down his apprehension. What were they walking into this time? The girl, Mia, had fallen from the swings, and the perception of pain was evident in the way she held her arm. As the adults began to filter into the fray, Tom found himself faced with a choice. Would he step in and support immediately, or would he let this situation unfold, trusting that the other parents could lead? He could see Hank hovering nearby, his presence a reminder of the confrontation moments prior. The tightness in Tom's chest returned. Was he willing to stay true to the growth he was experiencing, especially in front of Hank, who suddenly loomed larger than life? Before he could fully explore the apprehension, Jake's small hand tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, can you help her?" he asked, sincerity etching concern across his young face. At that moment, Tom recognized the incremental shift in himself. It was time to cultivate a culture of empathy, not only for his son, but for the community of kids surrounding them. Tom leaned down and spoke softly. "What do you think we should do?" Jake, fueled by an unexpected confidence, replied, "We should ask her if she's okay, and maybe we can call her mom." As Tom witnessed his son stepping up, a swell of pride surged through him, echoing the lesson he had aimed to impart. It wasn't just about his own growth, it was about fostering resilience and compassion in Jake. He realized that his role was expanding beyond just being a protector. He was a mentor, planting seeds of strength within Jake. "That sounds perfect," Tom affirmed. Together they approached Mia, kneeling beside her as Tom gently asked, "Mia, can you tell us what happened?" Taking charge, Jake leaned in. "You fell off the swing, right? Do you think you might need help?" The way he reached for her hand, firm yet inviting, was a magnificent testament to the transformation unfolding before Tom's eyes. Mia looked from Jake to Tom, her trembling posture gradually relenting. "I think it hurts. I'm scared." Tom felt a wave of understanding wash over him. In that moment, emotionally vulnerable yet profoundly hopeful, everything clicked. This wasn't about shielding Jake from pain. It was about teaching him how to negotiate his feelings and support others through theirs. "Fear is okay, Mia. We're here to help you. You're not alone," he said, the weight of his words striking a chord in the crowd that began to gather around them. Hank's expression transformed subtly, an acknowledgement of the situation that demanded genuine response over bravado. Something unspoken lingered between them, a silent challenge resting in the air as Tom continued to tend to Mia. They eased the girl's discomfort while ensuring her safety, a small but vital example in action. As the other parents began to arrive, concern flooding their faces, Tom realized that their small act of compassion might ripple into something greater in their own interactions, their own families. "Hey, Tom, nice work," Hank murmured, his voice unfurling like an unexpected breeze, a turn in the tide. Tom took a breath, savoring the rare moment of connection. But just as he felt the warmth of acceptance, a sharp edge sliced through the atmosphere, drumming a stark reminder that the journey of growth was far from over. The call had previously lingered in his mind. What more might this situation expose, not just about others, but about his own responsibilities as a dad? As the crowd dispersed, he sensed looming confrontations ahead. He turned to Jake, eyes bright with determination, and suddenly understood. The choices they made together would form the pillars of a bond that faced down darkness. But even as he embraced the moment, a familiar dread rose anew, whispering of challenges beyond his sight. It would only intensify. "Dad, next time, can we show everyone how to help others?" Jake asked, an innocent yet profound inquiry punctuating the air. Tom realized as he nodded that the journey had just begun. This family dynamic they were forging together was a living story, fraught with trials yet bursting with potential for self-discovery. And in that anticipation, he could hear it beginning to unfold, the moment of truth waiting just ahead. The quiet aftermath of the commotion settled around Tom as he walked with Jake back toward the car, the boy's small hand warm in his own. Just moments ago, he had felt the rush of adrenaline, the surge of action reminding him of his own vulnerabilities. In the flashing headlights of that chaotic scene, he glimpsed new facets of his role, not merely as a father, but as a guiding force who could instigate real change in the way they interacted with the world. But uncertainty still smoldered in the depths of his mind. What value would his newfound understanding hold against the shadows of conflict creeping back into his life? Each step toward their vehicle felt heavy, an echo of the worries he had been attempting to drown out. "Dad!" Jake's voice broke through, clear and straightforward, pulling Tom from his contemplative state. "Can we practice what we talked about at the park?" The suggestion anchored Tom, revealing the path forward, yet a hint of trepidation slithered through him. "How do you want to practice?" he encouraged, surprised by how eager he was to hear his son's ideas. "We should help someone else who needs it, you know, a friend or someone at school." Jake's enthusiasm glimmered, a testament to his desire to not only support others, but to bridge the lessons they had learned. Tom admired Jake's instincts, but a nagging concern twisted in him. Was he ready for the potential backlash that could arise from such an ambition? "What if they don't want help?" he pressed, looking for uncertainty in his son. "They might not, but that's okay," Jake insisted with youthful clarity. "We can still ask. Maybe we can show them they're not alone." Every word from his son struck deeper, echoing with the resonance of their earlier conversation. How many times had he remained silent, watching wrongs unfold around him because he didn't want to engage? The thought recoiled like a physical lash, reminding him of his own hesitations. Yet he found himself nodding appreciatively. "You're right. Asking is the first step." As they settled into the car, Tom stole a glance at Jake's determined face, and it stirred something within him. It was not just about teaching Jake resilience. It required a deeper commitment to embodying it himself. Could he shed the years of his own reticence as a father? Those moments when he had prioritized his comfort over his son's needs? With every mile back home, Tom envisioned opportunities. He would reach out, promote openness, encourage vulnerability, not just for Jake's development, but as a testament to the father he wanted to be. His heart ignited with a renewed sense of purpose, one grounded in a tangible connection with Jake. Arriving home, Tom felt the familiar pulse of domestic life, the comfort of routine edging out his earlier apprehension. Still, that settled warmth was shadowed. The echo of Hank's laughter over the situation at the park lingered in his thoughts. While he had celebrated personal victories earlier, the undercurrent of Hank's skepticism remained a thorn in his side. How would he present these burgeoning ideals to his own father-in-law, a veteran of hard truths and an avowed skeptic? That evening, Tom found himself confronted by thoughts of Hank and the implications of their earlier encounter. What kind of father-in-law would he become? The mark of skepticism still stung, a reminder that while he was discovering new roots of strength and vulnerability, others would cling to old narratives. "What are you doing, Tom?" the voice in his head asked, pushing him closer to grappling with his fears. He would make his ideals known, challenge the norms laid by previous generations. But what if Hank met this change with laughter again? What would that reveal about Tom's journey? He imagined that confrontation against the backdrop of a shared meal at the family table, the lens of judgment skewed by an unyielding resolve. "Tomorrow," Tom declared to himself as they settled in for the night, "I will take the first step." And in that moment, he felt the gravity of all he'd been wrestling with surface anew, a tide of determination not only to stand by Jake, but also to confront his hesitations directly. But just as clarity washed over him, an unsettling premonition licked at the edges of his consciousness. Was he ready for the fallout that awaited him with Hank? What would confrontation lead to? And would it cement the growth he so desperately sought, or would it highlight just how far he still had to go? Resting his head against the pillow, Tom closed his eyes, recognizing that the choice ahead would be pivotal, marking the final test of his resolve. He breathed deeply, feeling the weight of tomorrow's confrontation heavy in the air, promising unexpected revelations that could very well alter his path. The morning light seeping through the curtains brought little comfort. Tom sat at the kitchen table, fingers absently tracing the rim of his coffee cup as he stared into the dark liquid. Today was the day he would challenge not just Hank, but the anxiety coiling around his decision to embrace this new path. The clinking of dishes in the background was a sharp contrast to the cacophony of thoughts in his mind. Jake bounded into the room, his energy a beacon of innocence and determination. "Dad, I've been thinking about who we can help today." His voice sliced through Tom's haze of worry, and the boy's unyielding enthusiasm ignited a flicker of pride in him. "That's great, buddy. Who comes to your mind?" Tom asked, resting his elbows on the table, ready to lean into this moment of connection. "There's that kid, Max. He's always sitting alone at lunch. Maybe we can invite him over to play? Jake's eyes sparkled with hope and a hint of trepidation concerning social acceptance. The weight of the situation settled upon Tom's shoulders. Inviting Max could open doors, not just for Jake, but also for Tom himself. To step out and risk rejection was the very essence of what he had been contemplating. "Let's do it," Tom finally said, the words feeling like the first crawls of a new chapter in his life. As they prepared for the day, Tom couldn't shake the gnawing question. What would Hank say if this plan fell flat? Would the laughter he feared echo in his mind again? It filled him with a sense of foreboding, reminding him that while the opportunities for growth existed, the potential for failure loomed large. The drive to school felt longer than usual, each mile stretching his resolve even thinner. Jake, oblivious to his father's inner turmoil, hummed an upbeat tune, swaying in rhythm to the music that blared from the radio. Tom admired the innocent belief his son held about the world, a firm conviction that kindness could bridge divides. Arriving at the school, Tom watched as Jake bounded into the building, his small figure swallowed by the throng of students. A pang of nostalgia pierced through Tom. In that moment, he remembered himself at Jake's age, naive yet unafraid. The thought was quickly eclipsed by the dread of Hank's skepticism lurking around the corner. Retreating to his car, Tom stared at his hands gripping the steering wheel, feeling his pulse quicken. He had to articulate this newfound vision of fatherhood he was embracing. He couldn't keep stalling. Swinging his car towards the familiar road to Hank's place, he braced for confronting the voice in his head, the one that echoed Hank's disbelief, reminding him of the resignation he had lived with for too long. When he arrived, the smell of bacon frying greeted him, comforting, yet charged with anxiety. Hank greeted him with that trademark, disarming grin that always held a trace of skepticism. "You look nervous. What's the occasion?" His tone was light, but a twinge of seriousness ebbed beneath the surface. Tom exhaled slowly, words catching in his throat. "Actually, I wanted to talk about some things, about being a father, and how I want to approach it differently with Jake." Hank's laughter rang out, a sound that was familiar yet unforgiving. "You? Change your ways? That's rich." A flush of fury ignited within Tom. "It's about more than just my ways, Hank. It's about Jake's future. Today, we're reaching out to someone who needs it. I'm trying to be a role model." The laughter faded from Hank's expression, replaced with an intensity that caught Tom off guard. "And what if it doesn't work out?" he probed, the challenge stark in his voice. "That's the point." Tom's voice rose, cutting through the air, mingling anger with desperation. It might fail, but he needs to learn that it's better to try than to sit back. Just then, a moment of shocking clarity struck Tom. He wasn't just advocating for Jake, he was fighting for himself, too. The realization resonated deep within his core. "I need this, Hank. I need to show Jake that vulnerability can coexist with strength. But that requires faith." The weight of his words hung in the room, amplifying the tension as they both faced the truth of their larger conflict. The silence that followed felt electric, charged with uncertainty and the promise of change. Tom had laid bare not just his intentions, but the aching necessity for growth that loomed large between them. As Hank's features relaxed, a reluctant sign of respect emerged. "Next time, don't expect me to laugh. I might surprise you." In that moment, Tom felt the soil of his foundation shift beneath him, realizing that progress might indeed come from these moments of conflict. What he didn't know was how their exchange would ripple into their next encounter, nor what challenges lay hidden in the heart of this unfolding journey. Only that the path of fatherhood was one cloaked in unexpected truths waiting to be unearthed. With resolve building within him, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that change was not merely an ambition, but an inevitability that would challenge everything he thought he knew. And as their exchange settled, the question nagged at him. What would Hank's next revelation bring? Tom drove home with a swirling sense of possibility mingled with uncertainty. The conversation with Hank had opened something within him, an uncharted territory of resolve balanced precariously on the edge of self-doubt. He thought of Jake, how bold he was in wanting to connect with Max, and it sparked a renewed determination deep inside. Arriving home, Tom found Jake sprawled on the living room floor, lost in a world of colored pencils and paper. The sight was refreshing, a reminder of the pure creativity children possess when untethered by fear. But with it came the nagging dread that children like Max lurked in the shadows, waiting for acceptance that may never come. This pushed Tom to confront his own anxieties. If he didn't model connection and empathy, what kind of example would he leave for his son? "Hey, buddy!" Tom's voice held a vibrant enthusiasm that surprised him. "How about we work on that invitation for Max together?" Jake looked up, his eyes brightening at his father's energy. "Okay, do you think he'll like it?" "Of course he will," Tom replied, buoyed by Jake's enthusiasm. They gathered supplies, crayons, stickers, and clean sheets of paper, and let their creativity flow. Tom lost himself in the moment, laughing as they brainstormed a fun invitation filled with drawings and friendly wording. Yet beneath the fun, he wrestled with inner turmoil. As he penned down, "We can't wait to play with you," he couldn't help but feel the weight of rejection looming over the gathering thoughts of what their first interaction would look like. What if Max didn't want to come? What if Hank's scornful attitude echoed in Jake's mind? Jake enthusiastically jabbed his crayon into the paper, his innocent hammering a stark contrast to Tom's internal battleground. "Dad, we should draw a big sun. It'll make him happy." The simple suggestion pierced through Tom's fog of worry, reminding him of the unrelenting core that made parenting worthwhile. As the evening wore on, they finished the colorful invitation, and Tom felt the burden of anxiety lift slightly. The act of creation ignited the flame of possibility. Perhaps he could not only redefine fatherhood for Jake, but also for himself. Could these small exchanges help rewrite the narrative of their family, moving away from failure and flippancy toward connection and empathy? Just as he was lost in thought, the doorbell broke his reverie. Puzzled, Tom exchanged glances with Jake, who instantly raised an eyebrow, his curiosity awakened. "I'll get it," Tom offered, strangely anxious as he walked towards the door. A fleeting moment of doubt washed over him. What if he opened the door to someone criticizing his approach or, worse, Hank delivering snide remarks? Yet, when he swung the door open, it wasn't Hank, but a familiar face. It was Max, a shy smile gracing his lips, accompanied by a hopeful John. Hi, I got your invitation," Max said, eyes darting nervously from the invitation in his hand to Jake, standing behind Tom. "Hey!" Jake exclaimed, bounding forward. "We are so glad you came. We were just about to build a fort." The joy in Jake's voice was infectious, a moment steeped in pure childhood excitement that Tom simultaneously cherished and feared was too good to last. "Can I?" Max asked, his timidness almost palpable as he stepped closer, his voice edging on a whisper. "Of course! The more the merrier," Jake beamed, turning back to Tom, whose heart began to swell with pride. As they ushered Max into the living room, Tom felt hope bloom, but a familiar voice crept into his consciousness, reminding him of Hank's laughter as he lay in wait. Did these beginnings carry the weight of triumph, or were they destined to collapse under the strain of expectation? Watching Jake and Max dive into their imaginative kingdom, Tom couldn't help but feel a pulse of purpose radiate through him. But in that moment of stillness, he was struck by a revelation. The journey ahead would not be without its challenges. The acceptance he craved from Hank lingered in the background, threatening to cast shadows over this new chapter if he allowed it. As he settled down on the floor to join the boys, he recognized a powerful truth emerging. If he wanted to break the chain of skepticism and fear that entangled him, he must confront it with a relentless spirit. Yet just as his spirit rallied, a sound shattered the calm, a thud, followed by a sharp cry from the living room. Tom's heart seized. He turned instinctively, and dread washed over him as he registered Jake clutching his face, blood trickling from a sudden injury. Max was on the floor, eyes wide with shock. "Jake, what happened?" Tom rushed, instinctively reaching for his son. In that tense moment, Max muttered a single word that struck Tom like lightning. "Sorry." The air around them shifted, each second weighing heavy with unanswered questions about acceptance, friendship, and what lay ahead. Tom fought to keep his composure, knowing he had to navigate through panic to uncover the truth of not just this immediate crisis, but of the nature of their evolving lives. The enormity of the moment pressed down on him, igniting the question that would guide his next steps. Would this prompt an unraveling or a deeper understanding of what it meant to forge connections in the uncertain territories of parenting? The revelation had yet to dawn upon him. It was merely the beginning of a path shrouded in complexity and unpredictability. The room pulsed with tension as Tom knelt beside his son, blood seeping from the small cut above Jake's eye. Panic surged beneath his skin while he examined the injury, making swift calculations. Would he need stitches? Did it require a trip to the hospital? "Jake, buddy, can you tell me what happened?" Tom pressed, his voice steady despite the chaos inside him. Jake winced, his face crumpling in pain, yet trying to muster a response. We were playing around and I tripped," he gasped, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Max didn't mean it." Tom felt the sting of frustration ripple through him. How easily these moments could spiral out of control, how easily conflict could brew in the playground of their lives. "But I shouldn't have pushed," Max interjected, quaking at the edges of the scene. The boy's voice carried an urgency that was both sincere and anxious, his small frame tightening with guilt. "Max, it was an accident," Tom reassured him, striving for a tone of calmness, although he could feel tension pooling. "I understand that, but we need to make sure everyone is okay first. Can you run to the bathroom and grab a clean towel?" Little feet scampered off, while Jake laid on the floor, cradling his face in a mix of shock and burgeoning anger. "Dad, I just wanted to have fun," Jake whimpered, vulnerability etched into the very fabric of his words. I know," Tom cooed, embracing his son, who melted into his arms. The warmth of their connection momentarily soothed Tom's urgency. "This is part of the learning process. It's okay to mess up as long as we learn from it." Jake pulled back, eyes wide with uncertainty. "But I don't want to mess up. I want to be strong, like you said." Tom clenched his teeth, internalizing the weight of their earlier conversations. "Strength isn't just about being tough, son. It's about how we respond when things go wrong. Each mistake or accident is a chance to grow." Max arrived panting, holding out a towel stained with indigo ink from the colorful invitation they had just made. "I'm sorry, Jake," he whispered, guilt painting his young features. "I didn't mean for you to get hurt." "Accidents happen. We'll fix this," Tom reminded them both. As he helped clean up the cut, he couldn't help but think of how fragile relationships could be, just like Jake's spirit. Was this moment a crippling setback or an opportunity for growth? Jake's uncertainty began to dissolve as Tom applied pressure to the cut. His eyes cleared a little, and he looked at Max, who sat nervously beside him. "I'm all right, I guess," Jake said slowly. "Let's just play, but without pushing." "I promise." Max nodded ardently, his earnestness carving a bond between the two. Tom stepped back, surveying the scene. The boys exchanged glances, the remnants of tension fading into the background, an important lesson taking shape between them. "See, this is why talking things out is important," Tom said softly. "You learn what to do and what not to do. It's how we grow stronger together." Jake nodded, a flicker of acceptance appearing on his face as he absorbed the answer. Perhaps the initial panic had uncovered something significant, a natural evolution in their young friendship, a soft reminder to all of them about the value of communication. "Dad," Jake began, folding the towel carefully, "can we still build that fort? I want to show Max the way we do things." "Definitely," Tom affirmed, realization dawning. This was the moment of transformation for all three of them, rooted in vulnerability, yet bursting with potential. As they clustered back around the crafting table, Tom felt the anxiety that had taken hold of him lift ever so slightly. Right now, the connection between the boys needed nurturing, and as he chipped away at his own doubts, the narrative they would build together hinged not just on strength, but compassion. "All right then, let's make this fort solid," he encouraged, pulling materials together and offering his insights as they constructed their imaginative fortress. Max's laughter soon mingled with Jake's, allowing Tom to bask in the warmth of their unrefined camaraderie. Was it possible that this was his chance to not only foster kindness between the boys, but to reshape the very fabric of their family's legacy? Today was a good reminder, he thought, reflected in the playful noise swirling around him. It demonstrated that strength comes not from dominating, but from supporting each other, even when we falter. But even as the laughter echoed affirmatively in the air, a quiet rustling rippled through Tom's mind. Hank's laughter was an ever-present shadow, a reminder of the challenges still unrealized. Would he be ready to challenge that legacy directly when the subject arose again? Would these moments of meaning amplify, or would they fall victim to old narratives? "Tom," Ava called, pulling him from the depths of his thoughts, her eyes brightening as she witnessed the kids engaged. "What a great idea, getting Max involved." "Thanks, Ava," he replied, his voice earnest. "It's been good for Jake to foster relationships." As the night settled in, Tom realized this would be about evolution in more ways than one, not just for Jake and Max, but also for his family dynamic as a whole. Perhaps this was the push he needed to confront the traditional expectations Nate embodied, but it would require his commitment to this newfound mindset. In the embrace of this moment, Tom felt a newfound clarity and purpose, a beautiful paradox of grounding into certainty while floating in the sea of ambiguity ahead. Perhaps, just perhaps, the best way for him to change the course of his family's legacy, one built on anxiety and shame, would begin by holding space for their emotional journeys together. And as hope flourished in his heart, Tom understood. A beautiful transformation waited just around the corner. This path might thrive on uncertainty, yet it held the promise of a different future, one brimming with understanding, growth, and needed compassion, now stronger than ever. In the pulsating quiet of the evening, Tom whispered a commitment to himself. He would keep nurturing that truth. He would face the past unapologetically and move forward, not just for Jake, but for their whole family. This was the moment to embrace, as tomorrow promised to reveal even more. But tonight, they were building something special, a legacy founded on care, resilience, and unwavering love, transforming their universe one heartbeat at a time. Now, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a new journey awaited, one that would unfold naturally in the conversations, actions, and bonds formed as they stepped forward into the unknown. Tom felt ready to embrace the future with open arms, ready to mold a new identity steeped in empathetic strength, ready above all to commit to the promise he had made, if not just for Jake, then for the robust family legacy yet to come. The scenic view of a new horizon beckoned, and standing on the cusp of this new reality, Tom opened his heart and mind wide, knowing that together they could conquer whatever lay ahead. The ache faded away, replaced with flourishing possibilities as laughter filled the space, a soundtrack to the vibrant journey they would undertake, step by step. It was the moment. No turning back now, only the wonderful beginnings of becoming.